Hi everyone, how are you guys doing? So today I am going to be talking about establishment of Christianity in Sierra Leone and Nigeria. In this particular video, I'm going to be talking about Sierra Leone, and in the next video I'll be uploading on my page, I'm going to be talking about establishment of Christianity in Nigeria. So if your notification button is not on, please switch it on so you will know when I drop another video. And if you have not subscribed to this page, you should subscribe so that you'll be able to see those videos easily as well. And please do not gatekeep this. Share with your friends that are also preparing for this exam that you're preparing for. Okay? And check the videos, other videos that I've created for you, and do well to watch them, jot down things, and ask questions afterwards. You can make use of the comment section and drop your question, right? Okay, so let's get right into it. I had to put this image so that at least there's something you are watching, right? But please just focus on my voice and make sure you jot things down. So let's get right into it, right? So Christianity in Sierra Leone. Let me start by saying that Sierra Leone was one of the first places in West Africa where Christianity took firm root. Yes, so Christianity started, let me just say, is one of the first places in West Africa. So you know that in Africa we have West Africa, right? So when you're talking about places where Christianity started in West Africa, Sierra Leone was like one of those major places where Christianity started. And how did this happen? So Sierra Leone became like a settlement for freed African slaves. So there was a time where they were doing slave trade, right? They come to African countries to buy slaves, and they transport them to Britain, to America, to Europe, right? So at a point, there was this abolition of slave trade that happened, and right after then, they had to release those slaves that they have bought, right? Even those that they were still bringing from Africa, they had to just release them at the moment that they realized that slave trade has been abolished, right? So this Sierra Leone became a settlement for freed African slaves. Those African slaves who had been rescued from Europe, that had been rescued from Americas, right? After this transatlantic slave trade that I talked about. So most of these free slaves, they had been converted to Christianity by missionaries in Britain. You know that all these we mentioned Baptist, Methodist, these churches were already in Britain, right? So when one is a slave and your master attends these churches, of course you become converted to Christianity. So most of these free slaves, they had been converted to Christianity by missionaries in Britain, and even those slaves in America, before they were now resettled in Africa. That's Sierra Leone. Are you following? So when they returned to Sierra Leone, they brought the Christian faith with them. You get? They brought the Christian faith with them, and that's how Sierra Leone became the starting point for organized Christianity in West Africa. I hope you understand now. So that's why where they settled was called Freetown. So I believe that's where the name came from, like Freetown, the town of the freed slaves, right? So that's just the background to this particular story. Okay, so now let's look at the key events, right? The major event that happened. First off, I want to talk about the 1787 free slaves that moved from Britain, to settle in Freetown. Okay, please, I want you to take note of all that. So in 1787, now for people that they struggle with dates, okay, if you know that you're struggling with dates, instead of saying 1787, you can say in the 18th century. All right, for example, now this is 2025, right? We say we are in the 21st century. So when you see 1787, that's you call it the 18th century. So you can say in the 18th century if you are not really good with year, because it's better if you don't even write the year than to write the wrong year. Okay, so in 1787, this British government arranged to resettle some freed African slaves or black slaves, right, that were in London. So they wanted to, move them from London. These guys had become poor, and homeless, because they are no longer with their masters and all. So these free slaves were now sent to the area called Freetown in Sierra Leone. Now, of them died due to poor living conditions. They started practicing Christian worship in small groups because, like I said, their masters were Christians, so they already converted. So getting to Freetown, they started, practicing Christian worship in small groups, and then this early settlement was now called the province of what? Province of Freedom. Province of Freedom. These are little settlement that they started worshiping. It was now called the province of Freedom. So moving on, I know you would have heard of the Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians, right? So these Nova Scotians, they came from America. Okay, these guys came from America, and this was in 1792. So these Nova Scotians, they were like freed. They were freed African slaves. These guys had supported the British during the American Revolutionary War, right? So because they had earlier been settled in Nova Scotia in Canada, right? They eventually now moved to Sierra Leone because, like I said, these guys are also African slaves. So for me, I feel it's just like knowing that, oh, other African slaves are in Sierra Leone, let us also move to go and stay with them. So these are these Nova Scotians, right? They came, right? So many of them were already devout Christians where they were, in Nova Scotia in Canada. They were already devoted Christians, right? And they had strong Methodist and Baptist beliefs. Okay, so now when they go to Sierra Leone, that these guys they have strong commitment. These guys are already devoted Christians. So their arrival to Sierra Leone actually gave the Christian community lot of energy, lot of structure. Like people that already what's the word now? They are fully established in Christ. So they brought so much energy to this Christian community in Sierra Leone. And these guys organized churches. They started this communal worship. They influenced the social and religious life of Freetown. So you can see, right? The topic is establishments of Christianity in Sierra Leone. So you are seeing those things that led to Christianity being established, in Sierra Leone. All right, moving on. If you have not subscribed to my page, please do so now. Thank you very much. Moving on, in 1800, so you can say 1800. So now for 1800, now you can say in the 19th century. 19th century. If you don't want to say 1800, you can say in the early 19th century, right? In the early 19th century. So now in 1800, right, more free slaves moved from Jamaica to Sierra Leone as well, right? These guys, they are also freed African slaves. So these guys moved from Jamaica. They call them Maroons. I believe you would have heard that before, Maroons. So these were known as the Maroons, right? These guys were former rebels. They had been sent to Nova Scotia, and then this guy later now resettled in Sierra Leone, right? So these Maroons, they also brought strong Christian influence, especially in discipline, worship, and evangelism. So you can see the mix of energy of people that already devoted Christian from everywhere they came from, settling in Sierra Leone. There is no way, they will not impact the particular land. So that's how Christianity gradually, was established in Sierra Leone. So together, these three groups, from Britain, from America, and Jamaica, they gave Sierra Leone a very strong Christian foundation. Okay, so let's move on. Now, let's look at the missionary activity. So you can see that there's already, it's just like you already put a bed on the ground. You want to lay your bed sheet on it. So there's already a strong Christian foundation in Sierra Leone, through the freed African slaves. Now, the missionaries now started their own work. Now, in 1804, right, the Church Missionary Society, called CMS, they started their work. Right? So in the Church Missionary Society was a major British Anglican missionary group. These guys saw that Sierra Leone was not filled with free slaves, who were ready and eager to grow in the Christian faith. So when they saw that there are already Christians in Sierra Leone that they are flourishing and all of that, these guys are eager to grow, in 1804, this CMS, missionary group, they sent missionaries to formally begin Christian ministry in Freetown. And now they have funds, they have money. So they send their missionaries to go to Sierra Leone, go and start this big work, right? So when they got to Sierra Leone, what did they do? They can ask you in your exam, what were they able to achieve, right? This CMS, when they got to Sierra Leone, what were they able to achieve? First off, they built churches for worship, and they trained people. Another thing they did, they established schools to educate the freed slaves and their children. So some that they are poor, they send their children to school. So what they did was that they just combined academic learning with Christian teaching. They combined it together for them. Another thing that they did, I hope you are taking note of all these things. Another thing they did, they translated the Bible and Christian materials into African languages. So that if you can't read it in English, you can read it in your own language. And you know that they wouldn't have been able to do this if not for the help of the African slaves too. So when we are talking about African slaves here, don't just streamline your mind to Nigerian alone. No, that's why we call it African slaves, not Nigerian slaves. So they were able to translate the Bible and Christian materials into African languages, right? Another thing that they were able to do, they trained local Africans to become pastors, catechists. Those catechists, they call them Bible teachers, right? They trained, so all those local Africans that, they saw that this one had potential to be a pastor, they trained them to become pastors and missionaries. So this was key to the long-term survival of Christianity. Because, they might want to go back to their own town now, to where they came from. But now that they have trained those local Africans, they will be able to to extend their knowledge. When they get to their own land, they'll be able to, to evangelize more. Are you with me? So they did so many things, right? This CMS, I'm still talking about CMS, right? They did a lot of things, So Freetown now became like the Christian capital of West Africa. Because of this effort, Freetown became the center of Christian life and missionary activities in West Africa. From Sierra Leone, Christianity spread to Nigeria, Ghana, and other West African countries. Are we still together? Okay, so if you are looking at some key figures, that led to this establishment of Christianity in Sierra Leone, we look at Reverend Townsend. Although his work was more, what's the word now? Maybe more established in Nigeria, right? Townsend was like the first trained and was the first person to be trained. Yeah, if I'm correct, if I'm not wrong, yeah, he was the first person to be trained, and then he worked in Sierra Leone, and he was one of the pioneers of missionary activity sent by CMS, Reverend Townsend. Please don't forget the name. And these guys, later carried the Christian mission from Sierra Leone to Abeokuta. So his major work here, that's the word, his major work was in Nigeria, but he was trained and then he also worked in Sierra Leone. And we can't also forget Reverend Samuel Ajayi Crowther. Yeah, Ajayi Crowther was this young Yoruba boy that was also captured by slave traders in Nigeria, and he was rescued by the British Navy, and taken to Sierra Leone, where he was now converted to Christianity and he became educated. So this Ajayi Crowther became a brilliant scholar, right? He learned several languages, and he also helped translate the Bible into Yoruba. So this guy was ordained as a priest, later in 1864. And he now became it was in 1864 he became the first African Anglican bishop, but he was ordained as a priest before then. Then in 1864 he was recognized as the first African Anglican bishop, right? And he also became a missionary to many parts of Nigeria, including Lokoja, Onitsha, and Abeokuta. He helped to expand Christianity in West Africa. So this particular man, Ajayi Crowther, his story reflects how Sierra Leone didn't just receive Christianity, but they also trained Africans to take the gospel to their own people. So I believe that this explanation that I just gave you has opened your eyes or has helped you to understand better how this establishment of Christianity in Sierra Leone, how it happened, right? So you can now read further. Don't just stick to everything that I just mentioned here. Read further, do your research on other missionary bodies that came to Sierra Leone. Check for that. okay, so that you can have extensive knowledge of this topic. In case you are asked in your exam, you know what to do. Okay, so let me just do a summary of everything I just said, right? So I said Sierra Leone's role. Sierra Leone was like the first stronghold of Christianity in West Africa, and I talked about the free slaves that came from Britain, from America, and even from Jamaica, who brought their Christian beliefs to Sierra Leone. And I mentioned CMS missionaries, that they started work in 1804. They built schools, churches, they trained, African leaders, not just Christian teaching, academic as well. So, Freetown became the base for spreading Christianity to Nigeria and beyond. And Ajayi Crowther was an ex-slave turned bishop, and this guy can be said to be the symbol of African Christian leadership. So that will be all in this video. If you enjoyed this video, if you find this video useful, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.